Good morning, everyone in the Facebook world. I am sitting here in the Israeli Knesset in Jerusalem, the eternal, undivided capital of Israel. I think that's safe to say that around you.
Very
correct,
safe to say
Governor?
that, yeah.
And with one of the most supportive politicians in America for Israel today. First of all, thank you so much for all of your support, Governor Huckabee.
Well, thank you. Having come to Israel now this is the 44th year of my coming, and I've been here many times a year over the 44 years that I first came as a teenager, by the way. Let me make sure you know that.
Really?
Because I didn't want you to think I'm that old.
Okay.
I first came when I was 17, and I've been coming ever since. And this is such a remarkable country, and I've brought thousands and thousands of people to this country. I never get tired of it, and there's something extraordinary about not only the land of Israel, but about the special relationship that Israel and the United States have.
Right.
And I want to do everything I can to make sure people understand why that relationship exists, why it is strategically valuable to both nations, and what we must do to preserve it.
So, again, thank you so much. There isn't enough thanks because there's so many people out there in the world who do not understand the basics ABC, which I believe is just logical that you get. So thank you for that. Thank you for coming here. But I want to take you back. Where does this come from, Governor Huckabee? Where does your support for Israel and the Jewish people come from?
Well, there's two parts of it, one of which is my own experience. The experience of having come here over and over and seeing firsthand what a lot of people don't get because they don't get perception, they don't have an understanding of Israel, its unique position geographically, militarily, historically, and biblically. So part of it is just the life experience and the fact that I believe that truth ought to overcome darkness.
Amen.
Regardless.
Right.
And if Israel's wrong, let's say it. But if they're right, let's be bold about it. But the other comes from a faith perspective. I'm not Jewish, I'm Christian. And as I've told many of my Jewish friends who say, how come Christians are so very supportive of Israel? Because there's not a greater group of supporters of Israel than among the evangelicals in the United States. And I say, look, it's as simple as this. It's possible to be Jewish and have nothing to do with Christians. You cannot be Christian and not have everything to do with Judaism.
Interesting.
Because everything that's in the Old Testament we embrace and believe.
Right.
So I grow up understanding that Israel is not just another country.
Right.
And that the land is not just a piece of real estate.
Right.
That God gave the title deed to Abraham 4,000 years ago. Jerusalem is not just another city in the world.
Right.
It's a city that was uniquely the capital for the Jewish state. The only people for whom Jerusalem has ever been a capital have been the Jews. And when I hear people use words like occupation, I think, yeah, this has been occupied before. Occupied by the Babylonians, the Assyrians, by the Turks, by the Brits. It's been occupied by the Assyrians and many people, by the Romans. But when it relates to the Jews, it's not occupied, it's owned. Right. This is ownership, not occupation. Right. So there are many things for me that are both a historic and political reality. And then my faith perspective also reminds me that God never breaks a promise. And he said those who bless Israel will be blessed. Those who curse Israel will be cursed. I don't think that that's something that has disappeared. I think that's still true. And I think a lot of my fellow Christian believers in the United States embrace that, accept it, and believe it. And quite frankly, it's to me a pretty easy decision to make, especially when one comes here. You see that the dry bones have come to life. Right. The desert has bloomed. What I saw in 1973, when I first came here, just before the Yom Kippur War, in essence, the desolation of many parts of what is now lush, fruitful, amazing areas where there are trees and vegetation and harvest. It was dirt. Right. And it's just nothing short of miraculous.
So, again, we are thankful that you understand these basics. And here's my next question. We now have an opportunity, all right? And I'm going to ask you a different direction of an opportunity. We now have the opportunity to have an administration that understands Israel is a free country for all, and the best place in the Middle East for all of its citizens,
right.
Jewish, Muslim, Christian, the only one in the Middle East
Yeah.
that is this safe for everyone. How do we get that message across today to all of the Democrats or non-supporting of Israel, Americans in America, to realize not only is Israel a best friend militarily, strategically, and everything, but also in terms of those basic values that we believe in?
It's hard to understand why people couldn't see that for themselves. I don't know if they've been here and just didn't open their eyes while they were here, or they've just never been. But, I mean, Israel is the only true democracy between really Africa and Asia in terms of the entire region of the world. It's the one oasis where freedom is elevated, where people are elected and held accountable, where freedom of speech is a part of the norm. Criticize one's government in Tehran. Nobody will know where you are the next day. You'll never be heard or seen from again. And that's true of many, many capitals throughout the Middle East and in many parts of Africa and Asia. Anybody who comes to Israel knows that criticizing the government is a way of life. But that's a vital part of the freedom here. We criticize our government in the United States as a sport. You're the Olympic champions in Israel when it comes to criticizing government.
Right.
And all. I mean, I always tell people when they say, our politics over in America is so dirty, it's so intense. And I said, you ought to go to Israel. You want to see some nasty stuff?
It's true.
Come over here, because it's intense. But, you know, that's really the sign of a free society where people can even say wrong things, outrageous things. And I'm not suggesting that's good. But people can say the most outrageous things about their government, and they're not going to be shot.
Right.
And they're not going to be put in jail for it. As bad as sometimes those things are, the only thing worse is when you can't even speak and it be the truth without a penalty. Now, either we value that or we don't. And if we do value that, it's the foundation upon which all other freedoms are built. The freedom to do commerce, the freedom to own a home, the freedom to raise our children and instill in them values, or frankly, to instill in no values at all. The freedom of that still comes down to the basic idea of the right and responsibility of the individual.
All right, so I'm going to jump to politics for a second.
Okay.
How afraid do we in Israel or Israel supporters have to be about the last 2.5 weeks of an Obama administration and what he is planning to do against Israel?
Well, the good news is that Obama's gone in 17 days. Believe me, for me, that's great news. But nothing Obama can do is permanent. Every bit of it can be undone. And I believe that most all of it will be undone. In many ways, Obama has crossed a bridge too far. The most recent action at the UN, which was embarrassing to most Americans, and it was an act of hate toward Israel on the part of the Obama administration, not an act from the American people.
Understood. And Israelis know that.
I'm glad they do, and they need to know that.
Israelis know
because it was embarrassing to most Americans, and most Americans were outraged by the actions at the UN, the cowardly action. Let me be very clear. Underline, cowardly. Because they did that without really advance notice. They did that really in spite of every action that we have historically taken with Israel. And we did that without any attempt to ameliorate the potential damage. It was disgusting. I think we have to look at it, though, in context. This is an administration that is going out like a renter who's having to leave the apartment.
Scorched earth policy.
Before he goes, he's going to break every window. He's going to pull out the plumbing from the wall. He's going to trash and mark all over the floors and punch holes in the ceiling and leave it an absolute mess for the next tenant. And I think that's what we're seeing. And it's shameful behavior. But we can fix it, and we will.
Wonderful. And I just want to let you know, you had a wonderful interview dealing with this specific topic, the United Nations Security Council resolution. I think it must have been on Fox.
Yeah, it was on Fox last week.
And it was so powerful.
Well,
we put it on our website. We got it out there. I don't know whether hundreds of thousands of views, definitely tens of thousands. It touches a chord. And once again, I mean, I'll end this because we have more to do, but thank you so much for your support. And it's based on your knowledge. And I guess we just hope and pray here in Israel that more and more people around the world get to see through the misinformation they're given by, unfortunately, many journalists and many media to see the truth, as you do, about the state of Israel and the strong relationship necessary between America and Israel.
So.
Thank you so much for being here, Governor.
My
Huckabee.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Shalom from Jerusalem.